Good evening, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And this is going to be our discussion, reaction, review, spoiler-filled of Paper Girls from Amazon Prime.
Yep.
A little bit of a discussion before we kind of get into the main discussion. I've read the first two runs of the comic. Brian K. Vaughan, who writes the comic, is one of my favorite comic book writers. I really love Y the Last Man. I really love Saga. And so when they announced this, it kind of hung underneath the radar. I was excited about it, but I never really saw anything about it going on.
Kind of like Y the Last Man.
And then kind of like Y the Last Man, that had a lot more issues getting made than
Yeah.
this did.
Yeah.
And then the other thing with this is I don't think anybody's really talking about it right now because everybody's gushing over Sandman.
Right.
They both came out on essentially the same day.
Right.
And so I don't know who's going to watch this. But for me, I wanted to talk about it because I love this series so much.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one.
Spoilers for Sandman. That one just wasn't, it didn't hit us as well as it's hitting everybody else.
Right.
And I think this one hits us a lot better. It's 8 episodes. Sandman is 10. We normally want more time with the characters, but here they kept the pace going with those 8 episodes. And I think for me, as I sit right now, we just finished the last 2 episodes. When you try to do time travel in any kind of show or medium or whatever, there's a certain level of disbelief that you have to put in.
Yeah. Because we can't do that.
Because as we know right now, we can't do that. And with that conversation being had, we love Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Because it gets weird because of time travel.
Right.
And the comic gets very weird. I was trying to prep her before we got into this series. There's freaking dinosaurs and the microorganisms that run around with all the little legs that look like little worms with legs. They're so small you can barely see them with microscope kind of thing. Whatever.
Uh-huh.
Those because the timeline gets messed up. They come out into the real world and they're bus size and are eating stuff. Told you it gets weird. But with this series, there was just enough touch of weird to make the time travel less weird.
Yeah.
Is that a good way of putting it?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, honestly, at this point, time travel in TV shows and movies and stuff is not weird, right? I mean,
that's fair. That's fair.
We, since the 80s with Back to the Future, we've been living
Right.
with, well, and even before that with Doctor Who, obviously, but as a mass cultural thing, we've been living with time travel in pop culture. So I think adding the weird, I mean, there's just so much, there's so many, there's the underground and the SGA.
Yeah.
And the dinosaurs and, the all the weird terms that they use and everything, like the gloop or whatever.
Right.
And you're and one of the girls even points it out at one point. She's like, what is it with the weird names? Everything has to be called something weird. But there's heart. There's, I'm a girl and he's 12 years old. So we, can identify with the 12-year-old girls.
But whatever.
They come from 88,
yeah.
Right? So,
and spoilers, we both lived through 88.
Yeah, I was not a 12-year-old girl, but I was still just out of my teens at that point. So I remember all of that stuff very vividly, and all the pop culture references and everything. And then, we talked about it today while I was getting dinner and stuff, which is always a good sign if we're talking about a show or a movie or whatever.
Yes.
Was kind of the idea of moving forward in this season through in your own timeline. And do you really want to know what happens to yourself and to your family? do you not? I mean, how do you? I think that the desire is just there's no way
I,
you could not try to find
I,
out.
I I've been trying to quantify in my head what it was about this show compared to Sandman that hit with me so much, and I very much think it's the basic idea of if you could if you could see yourself in the future as your younger self and see how your life turned out, would you A, like you're saying, would you want to know? And B, would you want to know and change things?
Right.
Or is your destiny predetermined already, which is also dealt with in this show on a
Right.
very different level.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I loved Bullet Train so much. Cool, fun, campy fight scenes discussing the concept of, are you fated to be X?
Right.
And do you bring good luck or bad luck because your fate and all that stuff? And is your fate destined for something else? If you're having that same exact conversation, but you're just having it with 12-year-old girls and time travel and occasionally a dinosaur and a giant robot, like,
Yeah.
like you're going to grab me every which way of why I'm going to love this show.
Yeah.
And I think really when it comes down to my interpretation of this show, even though it veers very differently from the comic, and it's the comic's even weirder, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
But just my point of view was, I felt this show had a ton of heart.
Hmm.
It just happened to be wrapped up in a ball of time travel.
Right. And it wasn't just the girls with their moving forward again in this season through their timeline, but other people, Larry, they were actually moving backwards in
Yeah.
his timeline, and and he has an opportunity to change things that he doesn't even know are going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's some twists that people that you thought were bad aren't necessarily bad, which is kind of uh, a moral um, story,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Just because somebody tells you I'm the good guy, they're the bad guy. Again, they're 12, so they probably take a lot more on face value, but they told them that that these are the good guys and these are the bad guys, and they proceeded
With
with
under that umbrella.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then towards the end you start realizing that maybe things are a little more gray
Uh,
as to who
I
is good
I
and who is bad.
I
And
think there is one big bad pulling all the strings.
oh yeah,
But I also think that because that person is pulling all the strings, the people who actually are the strings that are being pulled, are doing things based off of what you're talking about. Like, those guys are the bad guys.
right,
We've always told you they're the bad guys. They're
right,
trying to mess up the timeline. And so it's your job to go through time and eliminate them.
right,
And if that concept is, it takes everybody a minute to kind of find their own truth, and we get there with almost all the characters in this show. They
yep,
find their own truth, and
yep,
I love this idea of just finding your own, like, finding your own path. And if you find out something that you it's the 14,000,082 that freaking Doctor Strange goes
yeah,
through, right? It's that kind of concept. They've traveled back in time. They've traveled forward in time, met their future selves. Then they can go back and make a point of staying at MIT and not
yeah,
getting into trouble, or learning my full truth or whatever. And I think that's just amazing storytelling to me. I'm trying to, like, the internet is all abuzz with Sandman, and
yeah,
it's great that people hit that. This hit me on every level that I wanted to hit on.
yep,
The performances. I want to talk about the performances first. Or next. The four girls all are green as can be. I think one of them had 0 credits until she got this job,
nice,
and I think the other 3 had like 1 or 2.
yeah,
And so they're all fresh faces. They're all the right age. they all embody the essence of the characters from the comics if they're not exactly correct. And for me, it's emotional canon from the comics that I want them to have that essence, especially somebody like Mac. Mac is a dick in the comic, and she's smoking and drinking, and she's 12, and she's just off the rails the entire time. But in the show, she's that, but you see her softening as we go along, which also
Right.
happens in the comic.
Right.
And
Because it's armor, because she's got a not great family
she's got
life.
it, or she perceives that she doesn't have a great family.
Right. Yeah.
And so just based off of Mac's story, I'm going to be involved. But then you get everybody else's. You get Tiff's story of failed potential and what that could have mean for you emotionally, and that you're adopted, and how does that
Right.
emotionally. You get Erin's story of her adult self like giving up to take care of her mom and not letting her sister in and having all that drama, and then you have KJ, who I like for the most of the run of the show, kept thinking in the back of my head, I just want to watch KJ.
Yeah, she was adorable.
Because the actress is playing her is Fina Straza. There's a scene where they're back at her house during 4th of July weekend, and the party is actually going on at their house and not at the pool at the lake house.
Right.
And she runs into her future self's girlfriend, has a very prominent conversation with her, and then watches herself kiss her girlfriend.
Yeah.
And it's the scene that a 12-year-old girl can do in front of a mirror for 30 seconds and not have a single line of dialogue.
Yeah.
No blocking changes. It's just her staring in the mirror of herself, working out the freak show she just saw.
Right.
She's 12. She doesn't understand
Right.
that.
First she's grossed out, and then the realization starts to hit her.
And that scene sold me on everything else that's going to show on the show. Her performance in that 30 seconds. I love anyone who can convey what they're feeling just based off of facial expressions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good acting.
And
definitely.
that's a talent that a lot of actors that have tons of years of experience can't do.
Yep.
That is something you're just innately born with. And if you're 12 and you're nailing that, you are the next Millie Bobby Brown.
Yeah.
Like I'm here for it. I'm here for it. But I just love all the performances. I like that the adult versions of all the girls that we got are close enough that you can just say, "Yep, that's the older."
Yeah, they're
version
believable enough that they
look close enough.
Yeah.
They kind of have this. They made a point with the two Erins to have them mimic each other's movements.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I mean, it wasn't like something you notice unless you're paying attention to it. But like,
and the Tiffany's too, when they both missed their grab for their jacket at the same time.
Yeah. They both kind of stumbled the same way and stuff, and they both flopped on the couches the same way. And so it's details like that in this show that's about finding yourself ultimately, but ultimately it's also about 4 12-year-old girls learning about the world and themselves. The whole tampon scene for 10 minutes was fucking hilarious
and relatable
and relatable. No. But at the end, after they kind of are getting the chance to kind of get their lives in 1988 back, Tiff says, I don't know what's going on, but I feel older.
Yeah.
Because they've been through something.
Yeah.
And like of course she feels older. They've been through some poo, and not like easy poo. There's like people dying themselves, watching themselves die.
Yeah.
Watching themselves be disappointments to their younger selves.
Yeah.
And like just heavy stuff for 12-year-olds to be talking about. And they even pointed out several times.
Yeah.
Like there's let's talk about a season 2 for like 2 seconds. As of this recording, which is August 9th, Um, it Paper Girls came out on the previous Friday, so the 4th, 5th. There has not been a renewal for season 2
Right.
as we sit right now. There is a ton of buzz. Most everything I've read, most everybody believes Amazon's going to give them another shot.
Yeah, and I was trying to think. So I think the first season of The Boys, it was a hot minute before Amazon announced that they were going to pick them up again. Now the second season, I think before it was even over, they were like, "And there's going to be a third season." But
Yeah. I do remember that.
But so it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't worry me that they haven't announced it yet.
Right. I'm just afraid that this got this with all the issues that happened with Why the Last Man and that story that could have been so much better handled if it was at Amazon or Netflix or something like that. I was in the past I would have said HBO Max, but that's a hot dumpster fire right now. But somewhere Amazon, Apple TV, something like that, that I felt like would have gotten 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah.
So now my concern now is with something like this that's kind of in the shadow of the hype of Rings of Power and House of the Dragon and Sandman.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like it could possibly get lost. And if that means that it's not getting the viewership that it needs to kind of keep that word of mouth, we're gonna post this probably on the 10th. Which will be on a Wednesday. We'll post it then, and then I'm just going to spend a week just making TikToks about this show because everybody else is talking about Sandman.
Yep.
And I just for our brand, I want to draw some traffic for us, but B, I want people to watch the show because I think shows like this, like Why the Last Man, are important to be having people watch, and they're based off of amazing comics. And if you come and watch the show and you have no concept of what's going on, you will go back and buy the comics.
Yeah,
and I really want to see that for Brian, and I want to see that for Cliff Chang, and I want to see this for these creators who are making amazing stuff in the comics that just isn't getting maybe the mainstream stuff because it doesn't say Marvel or DC on it.
Right. Yep.
So that is our thoughts on Paper Girl Season 1. I'm going to keep saying Season 1 because we're pretty good at Season 2.
I mean, they left it on a cliffhanger.
And they left it on a major cliffhanger of what was going to happen with the Chinese girl and the black girl in 1974 and what that's going to mean.
It's not the 50s, so...
That's true. And they just handled that in Season 2 of The Umbrella Academy. And
right.
That was... so let us know what you thought of this season and our reaction and discussion about it in the comments down below. Please be nice. That's a requirement around here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and follow us on all the social media stuff. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links in the description down below. And until next time, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.